Sup fellow nerds, it's good to see you. Can't even begin to describe how last week went. The response to my first solo video here on YouTube. Seriously, the number of views. Good God, the number of subscribers, the number of people sharing it, and also all the comments, people wishing me back really positively, and also just joining in the conversation about Doctor Who. Thank you for all of that, and thank you for the tweets and the messages as well. I really do appreciate it. It's been a mad week, and that was only episode 1. But before I get started, a little bit of housekeeping. I didn't mean to be so cryptic about What Culture on episode 1's review, and I think that's more because I didn't want to go in all guns blazing with my first video back and be like, this is what happened, but also because I didn't know who did or didn't know, and also who does or doesn't care. So, yeah. So, long story short, I left What Culture on my own terms back in February of this year to move on to bigger and better things. It did, admittedly, kick my mental health quite a bit being there over the last sort of year or so, and the whole Twitch debacle didn't help. Not something I'm going to explain here, but my very good friend and fellow former What Culture presenter Rach did a video all about what happened with Twitch, and as much as she's referring to what happened to her, basically the same thing happened to me. Now isn't the right time to talk about it myself, so instead I've linked her video in the description below. Go and send her some love, because she's wonderful. But yeah, I moved on, hence why I'm doing this myself on my own channel, and also I did move into more full-time work. I'm now at Traction.gg making racing game content, so I'm still on YouTube making stuff. It's just about racing games and racing hardware now, so link again in the description for that too. But anyway, let's talk about War of the Sontarans. Now, I don't give my overall thoughts on an episode right at the beginning of my reviews, but holy crap, what an episode. Honestly, I think that was the best episode of the Chibnall era so far, and I'm hoping that something else within the Flux or in these next few specials will dethrone it, but my goodness, the bar has actually been set surprisingly high. Okay, so the Flux consumes the TARDIS, the Doctor, Yaz and Dan, and they wake up within the Crimean War in the 1850s, except the Brits aren't fighting the Russians, they're fighting the Sontarans. We knew the Sontarans were going to seize the opportunity with the Flux ascending on the Earth, but why are they here now and not Liverpool present day? Vinder wakes up in an amalgamation of the sci-fi and the Aztec zone from the Crystal Maze and is asked by, not even kidding here, a priest triangle if he can repair. Okay, more on that later. After exchanging pleasantries with Mary Seacole, both Dan and Yaz do their best impressions of Marty McFly fading into nothingness during the Under the Sea dance, with Dan returning to Liverpool present day to find it overrun with Sontarans, as we thought, and Yaz joining Vinder in the Crystal Maze. But hang on, Matey from Liverpool 1820 is here, he wants nothing to do with Yaz, and then he just buggers off. That's the last we see of him in the episode. Okay. Also, Yaz has WWTDD written on her hand, and the moment the shot showed her hand, both Amy and I went like this. Bit cringy, bit of a crush, hero worship. It gives her confidence when she's by herself, sure, but did she have that on her hand from the start of chapter 1? I assume she didn't get the chance to pull out a pen and write it on her hand as the Flux was closing in. Anyway, so this place is the Temple of Atropos on a planet called Time, and these guys are the Mori. According to Swarm, or the Needler cosplayer as we like to know him, they keep time in check. But isn't that the Time Lord's job, to keep time ruled and going? Or is that the dude from the end of Loki's job? Getting big Loki vibes from the Temple of Atropos. Not going to spend all that much time regaling the events of the episode, I'm assuming you've just watched it yesterday or more frequently, but anyway. So the Sontarans have taken place of the Russians in the Crimean War, and the General and Mrs. Seacole still remember the word Russia somehow, so obviously the Sontarans are messing with the past from the present. Speaking of the present, we meet Dan's parents who, aside from giving us some exposition regarding the Sontarans' residency, they're honestly just brill to have on screen. Obviously being Dan's parents, John Bishop's parents, they were gonna have to be funny, and actually there were some genuinely good laughs in this episode, and they didn't feel really shoehorned in, they didn't feel out of place, kind of like how Marvel films inject that bit of funny in what could be quite a dark story. Big fan of Tempura energy, Dan and Carvanista slagging each other off, and I'm pretty certain by the end of the series they're gonna have a nice, lovely hug, or Carvanista's gonna emotionally die in Dan's arms. Oh, and who can forget Skark wanting to ride a horse. It was actually funny, not at all jarring, and I want to see Dan's parents again. Admittedly, if they made the effort to make those two characters, who could have been anyone, Dan's parents, I'm sure we're going to see them again. Let's talk Sontarans then, and I know I mentioned it last week, but I love the fact they've gone back to the classic design of these enemies, and also the hark back to the Pertwee era. They know they've had a tough time conquering the Earth, but their plan of invading the past and rewriting timelines under the influence of the Flux, and I assume the lack of stability over in the Temple of Atropos to supposedly make their victory a certain event, is genius. No, I didn't want them to win, but the concept was really cool. And as much as they squeezed in that fantastic horse joke, I thought they were played pretty brutally. Your blood will soak our uniforms and your bodies will soften our step is an honestly brutal line, and it works so well for the Sontarans. Plus, that whole interaction with Skark and the Doctor is just excellent. Look at her face. She knows he's screwed. That is until General Bellend rocks up and ruins the whole thing. Also, you can't at all tell this is Dan Starkey, can you? It's Strax. It's so blatantly Strax. Well, it's not actually Strax, but yeah, you can tell it's the same actor. Mary Seacole, played by Sarah Powell, was a fantastic addition to the cast and helped move the plot and means to a conclusion along. I thought Jodie's 13 played really well opposite her, and obviously while her character was very much fangirling the entire time, she kept her head on straight and involved her, and she was relevant in the plot. Good stuff. But before we go back to Atropos, let's talk about how our villains of the week were defeated. Laying the seeds of the Sontarans' resting and feeding routine was a clever means of keeping Mrs. Seacole relevant, as said, and while we knew it was going to be a quick fix to the Crimea plot thread since the episode was getting on a bit, a sharp conclusion wasn't so bad because it only took the antagonists out of that time. Liverpool present day and the rest of the Earth were still in trouble, so that part of the conclusion I really liked. Plus, General Bellend blowing them all to hell just further reaffirms that we humans are dicks. Standard Who representation, really. As for the present day Sontarans, I wasn't expecting them to be defeated in this episode. After Dan and the Doctor's quick space and time FaceTime, Carvanista rocks up to protect Dan and proceeds to crash one of the Sontaran ships into their fleet, triggering a temporal wave sending them wherever and escaping the ship via some hella ropey CGI. I almost hoped the Sontarans on present-day Earth were going to remain there for a bit longer, either into the next episode, whatever that's gonna be, Once Upon Time, we'll get to that in a minute, or even just on the back burner to come back a little bit later and have that sort of side of this conclusion be resolved another time. But admittedly though, we do still have a lot to get to in Flux, so leaving those antagonists in might have proved tricky in how everything else from here on is actually balanced and juggled, and we know that Chris isn't always so good at that. So I can completely understand why he got the Sontarans in, did them an amazing service, and then got them out again. Still though, that second half of the conclusion with the present-day Sontarans was a little bit too snappy. Speaking of snappy, the TARDIS is still a bit buggered. The Doc and Dan join Richard O'Brien and co at the Crystal Maze, but Swarm, Azure and their beefcake passenger have hooked both Yaz and Vinder to the thing. Swarm can simply snap his fingers to send the entirety of time through them both, and assumedly they'll go pop like Owen's rat jam. Plus 10 cool points if you get that reference. I've gotta say, even with only the brief time we've had with Swarm and Azure over the last 2 episodes, and in Chapter 1 having no bloody clue who they are or what they do apart from we know that he's from the Doctor's past somehow, I honestly really like these villains. I love their characterization and the fact their faces are incredibly off-putting to look at. I'm fascinated to know what their motives are and why they're doing whatever the hell it is they're doing. We don't really know yet. And I'm also intrigued to see how it ties in, or how they tie in, to the Doctor and the Division. Another great cliffhanger on another great episode. 2 chapters in, thumbs up for each so far, and I hope it's all upward trajectory from here. Surely because the threads we were stuffed full of from Chapter 1 are falling off one by one, the whole arc is getting almost lighter, faster, and better. Like how F1 cars burn off fuel and go faster by the end of the race. That's a relevant analogy because I immediately switched over to the Mexican Grand Prix after Doctor Who ended. I'm wearing a McLaren hat today. But it wasn't totally perfect. We still had Yaz being a bit odd with the whole what would the Doctor do thing, and the Doctor won't put the flipping Sonic away. Like, just look at the dude's uniform and work it out. Did you have to Sonic it? And of course, we have a lot of questions to ask from here. Big one. Did the Flux transport Team TARDIS to the 1850s, or was that something or someone else? If it was the Flux, does that mean everything else that's supposedly been annihilated simply been displaced in time and space instead? What are Swarm and Azure's motives, and why are they forbidden from the temple? What happened to Diane after her run-in with Azure, and why her? Why is Mr. Liverpool 1820 so relevant? Why exactly did Dan and Yaz fade away from the past, and why did they end up where they ended up? It's actually more the latter half of that question than the first bit, because the Doctor does say, like, you know, vortex energy plus flux equals all big fucky wuckies. I don't know. Who are the Mori, and are they related to the Time Lords at all? Why was Vinder outcast, and why did he end up on Atropos 2? And finally, the big one, who or what is behind the flux? It wasn't the Sontarans, they said so. So who was it? Finally though, let's talk about the Doctor. She's had her moments and she still won't put the bloody Sonic away, but I think this is the most Doctor we've had from Jodie Whittaker in all of her time in the TARDIS so far. Her lecturing Mrs. Seacole and the General felt like something straight out of New Who past, and thankfully her moral compass was pointing to, I'm not going to nuke the Sontarans, and I'll hate anyone who does. I hope this Jodie sticks for the rest of Flux and into her final specials. Maybe sprinkle in a little bit of that Doctor during the passing of the Cyberium scene in The Haunting of Villa Diodati. That is like my standout moment for Jodie's 13th Doctor so far. Put some of that in, and it will be great. It will be one hell of a swan song series for her if they finally nail her character down. Overall, as I said at the beginning of this video, I was actually blown away by this episode. I was worried we'd get bombarded with stuff again, but the pacing, the performances, the visuals, and the cliffhanger were all just brill. It is getting a solid 8 this week, and I don't want to push it any further up, because either it could continue to get better, and we see even better things than this as Flux continues, or it could go completely downhill. So I'm not going to get too ahead of myself. But yeah, I am very, very happy with Chapter 2, and Once Upon Time, weird but very cool title, I cannot wait. Finally though, Division weaponry in the hands of Yaz, Dan and Vinder. Perhaps more answers to that burning question as to who the hell the Division are also. But what did you think? I really enjoyed reading all the comments last week, and I'm looking forward to reading more this week, so let me know, and your score out of 10 in the comments section below. And if you haven't already, then please do subscribe to this very YouTube channel, because I'm making more Doctor Who content as the weeks of Flux go on, and I am currently in the process, as you might have seen, of re-uploading our Escaping Kasterborous podcast that Amy and I do. I'm re-uploading the episodes we've done so far independently here on YouTube, and eventually I'll catch up with myself on the audio side, because we have just released Friday just gone, Smith and Jones, the start of Series 3, so eventually they'll catch up and they'll be together from there on. But yeah, links in the description to that too. But that's that. Thank you again for the warm welcome back. Thank you for all of the tweets, all the comments, all the love, all the everything. But most importantly, thank you for watching. And until I see you again, have a great week. Get excited for Sunday. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you next time.